In today's video, we're going to be taking a big look at the tropics here, as odds have slightly increased from even yesterday that we will have a tropical cyclone of some sort in the Caribbean, heading maybe towards the Gulf or perhaps towards the Bahamas, eventually posing a bit of a risk to either the Gulf or East Coast of the United States. So we're going to be diving into that. Also, multiple cold fronts upcoming that are going to bring cooler weather, each of them, and also some storminess as activity is on a big time increase in the central states especially, but even a bit of the east as well. So a lot of exciting things to discuss today. Let's just dive into it. We're taking a look here at the European ensemble model first off, and this is the kind of like spaghetti plot. So we're seeing each individual model on screen here. I want to see if we can, if we turn off those lows, if it's a little easier to see. I think maybe it is, but I want to see the intensity, so we'll just keep it like this. But we do see that there is a little bit of action going on here on this European model, a lot of it heading towards Central America. This is a lot more on par with what the GFS model is showing, and through the end of the model run, we do get this kind of approaching either Jamaica here or Cuba, so that kind of area. And then we have a lot of it, like I said, kind of staying weaker and heading towards Central America. But look at the intensities. We have mostly 1,000 to 1,005 millibars in here. And we have quite a bit of like 990s and 980s going on in here. So the stronger lows seem to be heading directly northward, while the weaker ones are kind of creeping along that landmass that is Central America. Either way, let's take a look at the GFS model. And first things first, we're going to actually look at the 5-day, the 6-day, the 7-day. We're going to go straight through each day so we can see the progression. But around day 5 is when this thing will be starting out, and that's why we have a couple of areas of low pressure right here. But let's just go ahead and skip it to day 6. And we do see that we get quite a bit of progression. Some of these heading along Central America like we see on the European ensemble model, but we do have this kind of northward progression starting on a lot of them as well. As we move to day 7, it's pretty clear that the GFS model is looking at only a couple of members showing this Central America outcome, with the vast majority showing development and heading kind of northeastward. And we do have a lot of stronger lows in here, you know, lower 1,000 millibars, like 1,000, 1,001, 1,002, or into the 990s with most of these. Also, the colors is indicative of wind in knots, so we can see that up here on the top right. Lighter blues is 20 to 30 knots, darker blue is 30 to 40. Green is 40 to 50 knots, yellow is 50 to 60, so you get the point. Let's move to the next day here, which I think is day 7. And what we see is that a lot of these are heading towards either Jamaica here, somewhere in there, Cuba. We do have a couple impacting Haiti as well. So we have a lot of different outcomes. But if we were to draw a cone, we do see something like this being the look as to where it would be likely moving on a lot of these models through day 7. As we add day 8, things begin to get very intense, and we open up a little bit more eastern solutions here. Also notice there's a lot of stronger winds happening in here, like yellows, oranges, even reds. I see some pink in there as well. So we're getting a lot of intensity here on these models as well. Again, if we were to kind of update this and show a cone, it's something like this is what we're seeing. As far as what these models are calling for, with a mean average of, I would say, somewhere in here towards the Bahamas, tracking over Jamaica, over Cuba, and into the Bahamas seems to be the most called for solution here. And as we add another day, we don't get a whole lot of movement. Most of these lows are somewhere in here. Let's keep going. That'll take us to day 8. And we do get this one. This one looks really intense right into the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. 974, which would likely be a hurricane at least. Maybe even a pretty intense one there over the very middle of the Atlantic or the Gulf. We do have a lot of them out to sea, thankfully. So we get this kind of out to sea flow, which would be good news. Obviously, if it was to even develop. We do have a few right around southern Florida, which is bad news, of course. If not over the Bahamas, which is also bad news. As we add day 9, we get a lot of different solutions. We see this Central America or Central Gulf of Mexico one hits somewhere around the panhandle of Florida, perhaps Alabama. And there's a pretty intense hurricane, still a 985 over in between Alabama and Georgia there. We have a stronger one following it now, almost taking the same route just a day or two later. We have a lot of action happening here in the Bahamas. And as we add day 10, we get something like this. So the good news, I guess, if any, on this particular model run is that we do see a whole lot of them out to sea, which would obviously be the best news at this point because we don't get any Gulf of Mexico or East Coast hits from this one. We do see a few hitting somewhere along Florida, whether that's southern Florida, the panhandle of Florida here, maybe very close to Alabama, like we said. So we get about 2 right here, 1 here. I'd say 2 or 3 there hitting southern Florida. And as of now, the only one that shows an East Coast risk would be one crossing over Florida and then hitting the Carolinas here and heading up the coast. We do have the majority here showing an out to sea solution, which would be good news, but keep in mind this is very far into the forecast. We're talking well beyond 10 days out at this point. So yeah, this would not be very good news whatsoever. Really just a bad solution. So again, here's day 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 or so. I might have missed one in there or something, but that is the overall progression of this one. A little bit of a slow mover. We have a lot of intensification. So if this one does develop, it's basically going to have a pretty easy time developing, whether it's the Southern Caribbean, into the Bahamas area, or the Gulf of Mexico, or even off of the southeast coast. All of these areas, or even well offshore of the southeast coast, like those out-to-sea solutions. All of them showing pretty strong winds, pretty strong low pressure centers, and overall a pretty intense look. So let's go ahead and move into the overall pattern. I just wanted to give you guys a bigger update on that. I think that the GFS model has had a much better handle on the entire hurricane season for each individual system than the European model has, and that isn't really a real statistic that you can use with 100% certainty. It just leans you in one direction or the other typically, but we still like to consider the European model, even though it's been off with every single storm so far, because the models don't work linearly like that, where it's always going to be one's better than the other. You could see the European model all of a sudden nail one and then the GFS be completely wrong. So we have to consider basically everything at all times, unfortunately, because it'd be easier if we just had one model that's always better, but it's just not that way. By this afternoon on Thursday, this is what the overall pattern looks like. Some snowfall showers for the Rockies, some rainfall showers for the northern plains and Midwest. Overall quieter, a little bit of some cooler air making its way into some of the east and some of the areas around the Rockies, but a very flat jet stream, not really significant at all. Friday here, tomorrow on October 25th, we do have a cold front moving in. So we have this kind of weaker low over the southern Hudson Bay, dragging cold front underneath. We also have surging warm temperatures over the west, which is really going to aid in allowing for a lot of this cold to spill over behind that cold front. So that is what we're currently seeing here. Some warmer air will be surging for tomorrow afternoon along the east coast ahead of that cold front. It's a very typical setup. And as we really reach towards Saturday afternoon, it's when this trough is fully moved in. So again, your jet stream is very ridge-like over most of the west here. This is what we're overall seeing. And then the east is overall a trough, as you can see. So this is going to bring very cool temperatures compared to normal to the east and very warm temperatures compared to normal to the west is the overall look here on the jet stream pattern. We do have a little bit of a storm moving on to the Pacific Northwest, some rainfall here for these areas. Even though we're not seeing blue, I wouldn't be surprised if the Cascades, the mountaintops, are seeing snowfall. We do see a shower or two around for the deeper south states, and also nearby the Great Lakes or New England. That area kind of is seeing some showers passing around as well. As we move towards Sunday, we still retain those cooler temperatures in the east, so it should last through the weekend. We do have showers again for the deeper south still taking place, and also for some of these northeast areas where even some snowflakes could be flying with those cooler temperatures that have moved in. Meanwhile, we do have a stronger storm system. The actual low is located near the Canadian Rockies here. That has moved onshore, so we see snowfall for the Canadian Rockies. Also, the Cascades, both on the U.S. and Canadian side of things. and then rainfall for more of the lower and more coastal areas as we typically see. Again, this jet stream still looks like an intense ridge, especially over the central states and, some of the Rockies, and then a pretty intense trough over the west by this point, but that should be coming to an end here soon. And as we reach Monday, we see the beginning signs of that ending. Well, really, we saw it before this, but overall, precipitation and cooler temperatures moving into the west like this is a sign that this warm is going to push the cold out of the east and actually move into the east over time. So this is the flow that we're seeing by Sunday, Monday timeframe. Overall, again, rainfall is around for the Northwest in general, also Western and Central Canada. We're seeing rainfall in the lower areas, snowfall in the higher elevation and more northern areas. Overall, a pretty big snowmaker for the mountains of the West and also for a lot of Canada up there. Still, the East Coast should be seeing some cooler temperatures. We see a little bit of dippage still happening for this East Coast area while we have a ridge inland. So again, that is the flow here, but this should encompass the entire East over time. By the time we reach Tuesday, we do begin to see that happening. Strong push of warmth here over a lot of the Midwest, Southern Plains, Great Lakes, even into some of Eastern Canada. Here we see a continuation of this. Meanwhile, we still have some cooler air. It's certainly dying down slowly by the day, so each day should be a little bit warmer than the one before it, starting Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And we definitely have a lot of colder air out west and a lot of snowfall. Look at this. Oregon, Nevada, Idaho, Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, all these areas seeing snowfall and even very heavy snowfall for the states of Utah, Wyoming, and Colorado there as they get a pretty massive snowstorm taking place. Likely due to this 990 millibar low pressure center in between Colorado and Kansas, a very classic system. So what we see is a warm front out ahead of it, cold front down below it. So we see this cold air pushing southward behind this low, so we're seeing something along these lines, and then warmer air surging up towards that warm front out to the east of this low. This should be the overall flow as we see this storm move through. Again, some showers along that warm front boundary, and then some snowfall behind this low for the mountainous west is going to be a likelihood at this point. Wednesday, on October 30th, the day before Halloween, we see all of this is pretty much moved northward. We have a weaker low now over northern Wisconsin. Warm front still surging out ahead of it. A little bit of a cold front down below. This one, because of the amount of high pressure and milder temperatures we overall have in this area, might have a harder time pushing the cold eastward than our predecessors. So I think that we could get some more seasonable temperatures versus these highly above average temperatures that we're going to have in place. But I don't think it's going to, swing us, 10, 20 degrees in the negative direction. I think that we're going to get much closer back to normal with this one. That is the overall look here. And by Wednesday, we still have some lingering snowfall for these four corner states and even up into Wyoming. We also have some storminess still around for the Pacific Northwest, including some snowfall. But again, more coastal and lower areas will still see rainfall overall. This area here, along that warm front boundary and nearby the low, we are seeing some showers. And we do have a couple of showers or even thunderstorms underneath with this cold front area, although it's not very intense with this one, as we've mentioned. Thursday, on the 1st or the 31st of October, this will be Halloween. We don't see the low anymore. It's too weak, but it would be somewhere in this pocket. We do have this cold front, and it's looking a little bit more intense on this day. So thunderstorms and heavier showers would be a little bit more likely for the Midwest, Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, South Central states. The warm front here for Eastern Canada, we are seeing a little bit of some weaker, more consistent showers. It's more typical of a warm front. Again, stronger high pressure is trending here for not only the southeast, but also off the east coast. So this is going to create an area of warmer and overall higher pressure and likely drier conditions. So it should be a beautiful Halloween along the eastern seaboard. Areas more inland could be experiencing this unsettled weather. And then again, the southwest up through the northern plains also seems to be another beautiful spot, while the northwest is experiencing snowfall for the higher elevations and some rainfall once again for those lower and coastal areas. Let's just move it towards like the night time. I want to take us, this is 8 p.m. Eastern on Halloween. And again, most of the East Coast is experiencing a beautiful Halloween, although we have some of these Gulf states up through some of the Ohio Valley and into the eastern Canada area experiencing some rainfall and unsettled weather. Unfortunately, might be a little bit dreary for these folks if you have kids that are trick-or-treating as the main concern, obviously. The Pacific Northwest, again, continuing to see that snowfall and rainfall depending on your elevation and location overall. So some stormy weather in there seems to be a likelihood as well. That's the overall look for Halloween night. Nowhere's too cold. Overall, I would say most areas are more mild. The coldest areas would be for the northern Rockies and here in the Pacific Northwest, and then once again for the northern upper Midwest and some of the northern Great Lakes, like the upper peninsula of Michigan. Now, as we move towards November 1st, things get pretty interesting. We see some storminess building for the south central states. Likely a low is going to pop up somewhere in here over the coming hours. We have this kind of ridge in the east, trough that's a little bit more east-based in the west. So what we're seeing is some warmer temperatures moving northward up the west coast. This colder air is moving in for more inland areas like the northern Rockies, northern plains, and this should be on the move semi-eastward by November 2nd here on Saturday. What we see is a stronger low well to the south of the Hudson Bay, but this one definitely has a prominent cold front with it. Not the most prominent warm front in the world. We should see overall warmer temperatures along the East Coast, although this isn't the most intense northerly flow I've ever seen out front of a cold front. But this looks to bring much cooler temperatures behind it, this cold front. And we are continuing to see this kind of warm trend starting up, and we actually have a pretty strong high pressure center here over the Rockies. So that is all pointing towards cold moving eastward for that first week of November. And a high precipitation cold front as well right here. So more precipitation, colder temperatures likely to start out the month of November for those first few days. We're going to be watching for that very, very closely. Here's the total precipitation. A lot expected for the Pacific Northwest, quite a bit for the Rockies as well here. And then along where a lot of these lows are forming in cold fronts in here, we also get a well above average amount. Still rather dry for the Southwest and unfortunately for a lot of the East Coast, although some of that is moving eastward in my opinion. Here's the overall anomalies, and again, Pacific Northwest above average, Rockies above average, even the kind of northern plains and upper Midwest is above average, and then certainly this area in this pocket here is well above average as well. So those are the main areas we're watching for precipitation. And then the East Coast, not really looking too hot. Basically no precipitation, still like we've seen for like a month now or more. So that's the overall look on the precipitation. Let's move into the snowfall, where we do expect a pretty intense amount for the Cascades and Rockies in particular, where multiple feet of snowfall could be possible. The Sierra Nevada, we're looking at a few inches. It is a La Nina year, as I mentioned yesterday. And in this type of year, typically they take whatever they can get, because El Nino years are typically where they shine. La Nina years, they can go, rather snowless. Not completely snowless, obviously, but, much less than an El Nino would bring. We do see some of this creeping into the northern plains and upper Midwest, also for the mountainous northeast. So that is the overall snowfall look here. Here's the temperatures for the European model. Again, warmer right now. We do get this first kind of cold front here. This is for tomorrow on Friday, October 25th. So we see this for a lot of the southeast, mid-Atlantic, northeast, but also the west is rather cool. And this warm air is moving in. There is Saturday and Sunday where we get another cold front moving through. So for Sunday, this is a very intense cold look. Look at this. For these areas in the Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, Mid-Atlantic, Northeast, even Eastern Canada, all these areas are rather cold compared to normal, even 10 to 15 degrees below normal in those green areas. Overall, a warmer look for the West, but this is not going to last, is my opinion right now, as we're going to see a much more transitional pattern. Again, it lasts for days here. Here's Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. It's hanging on for the East Coast, but look at what's happening out west. This is the big pattern changer. Cold air really taking over for the West by early to midweek next week. So this is Tuesday the 29th. Warm air is surging for the Midwest and plains. The cold air is trying to hang on for dear life for the East Coast here, but that is not going to last forever. Wednesday, we see that warmer air does move towards the East Coast. It's especially prominent over the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, Midwest still, in Eastern Canada, where we could see 20 to 30 degrees above average in there, which is so insane. And the coldest temperatures will be sitting over the west here, where we have upwards of 10 to 20 degrees below normal. As we move on from this point, though, we do see that some of this cold air wants to try to move eastward. This is when it's kind of on the move here, again, for early November. Coldest temperatures centered over this area. Warmer temperatures finally surging for the west coast. And overall, this warm air should be on its way out, and this cold air should be on its way in to take over that space. That would also mean that these western areas will overall warm over time. So that is kind of where we end the model run off. Let's look at the GFS model real quickly as well. Cooldown number 1 right there looks about the same. Cooldown number 2 as well, a little less intense. Then we get the warm up with colder air moving eastward. We don't get that intense of a look here. The East Coast, we get a backdoor cold front here for November 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, which is very realistic. That's what we've been seeing. And then finally, some significant colder air is on the move eastward by the 9th here as well. So multiple cold fronts as well for this GFS model. And look at this, the West is significantly warmed by this kind of nearby the 10th November timeframe. So this could spell a warm in the West, cold in the East pattern. Although, look at the hours. Hours 384. So take this with a grain of salt for sure. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. We will be keeping you guys up to date with all things regarding the weather in general, but also, of course, the tropics, the cold fronts, the precipitation. Tune in with us daily. We'll be talking about all of these things. So be sure to subscribe. We upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.